Hey, tennis fans, you are listening to Matchpoint Canada, the official podcast of Tennis Canada. We are also members of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm Ben Lewis, joined alongside Mike McIntyre, currently halfway through the Italian Open in Rome. And this week, another great Canadian guest. We're joined by Rebecca Marino, who I had a chance to speak with. And we're also gearing up for Roland Garros. It's right around the corner, Mike, the French Open, which I'm fired up for.
We're in deep here in the clay court season and loving it because there's just so much going on. On the men's side, there's been some shocking upsets. On the women's side, it really seems like those top players are doing exactly what you would expect of them, which I think we mentioned last week. We're gearing up, I think, for fantastic Roland Garros in the women's draw. And speaking of women's tennis, so nice to have Rebecca Marino back. You got a chance to talk with her one-on-one this week, and really one of the nicest players out there. And given her story, which I'm pretty sure our listeners are well versed in, given the fact she's been on the podcast many, many times before, just great to see what she's done in this second phase of her career after taking, such a long break from tennis that most people wouldn't even consider coming back from that. And she did, and she's thrived and arguably played the best tennis of her career since returning to the game.
Yeah, and I love that she kind of touched on that without me even prompting the question, and you'll hear it in the interview. This one was timely because as we speak with Rebecca Marino, we currently have the cross-country tour now underway of the Billie Jean King Cup Champions Tour with the trophy moving across Canada. So it had a number of stops in BC and Rebecca Marino on hand at a couple different clubs in Vancouver, celebrating obviously that historic title from last year and being a part of that special team. And now back-to-back years where we've had titles and tours of international trophies, which, as you know, Mike, was something like completely unthinkable 10, 15 years ago.
It really was. Like, if you ever told me that you and I would have been posing next to the Davis Cup trophy a couple summers ago as Canadian champions, and that now we have the chance to do it again with the Billie Jean King Cup trophy as well. Yeah, it would have been a hard one to probably, believe. And that's no disrespect to our Canadian athletes. Like, we've come so far, but to say that you're world champions on both tours, putting together singles wins, doubles wins, doing it with the number of injuries that we've had on the Canadian side as well, unfortunately, with some of our top talent, it's super impressive. Do you know offhand when that trophy is coming to Toronto, or am I putting you on the spot too much on that one?
Well, I sense we'll have it. My hope is we'll have it there by the time of the National Bank Open.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, and obviously we have the women in Toronto this year, the men in Montreal. So it seems likely that we'll have it in Toronto early August. So Mike, you and I will have to get another photo, which will be awesome. But enough on that. Let's get to my conversation with Canadian Rebecca Marino. You are listening to Matchpoint Canada, the official podcast of Tennis Canada. Very happy to welcome back on one of our foremost Canadian tennis players, Rebecca Marino, who just recently wrapped up a Billie Jean King Cup Champions Tour, visiting with the trophy, and happy to have her back on the podcast this week. Rebecca, how are you?
Yeah, hello. It's great to be back on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I feel like it is good timing because as we speak, you are, in your home in BC, and as part of the Billie Jean King Cup Trophy Tour, celebrating that historic win last year. You got to be a part of that, maybe celebrating again this season as we take it around the country. What was that like just over the past few days? Visiting with fans and being around the trophy and celebrating that great title that you were a part of.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I'm really happy that I'm able to be home and share it with the community of Vancouver. We did a few stops in Richmond, Burnaby, and it's really great seeing how excited everyone from the tennis community and the general community has been about this. And also really nice and kind of nostalgic looking at the videos and the presentation and just everyone's thoughts and feelings about that historic win from our team. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see, it's going to go across the rest of Canada and eventually culminate at the National Bank Open and Omnium, which is really exciting as well.
Yeah, and nostalgia for the win last year, but was there a little bit of nostalgia as well, maybe for you, just kind of going back to your home and your roots and ultimately where you started your tennis career? Was one of these clubs actually where you kind of grew up playing and first learning the sport?
I mean, I feel like I've played out of every single club in Vancouver and the greater Vancouver area.
Okay.
So it's been really fun for me to go to these locations and tell stories about how I've been on these courts since I picked up the racket, and I still live and train here in Vancouver. So a lot of the people in the tennis community are people that I know very well. So it's really nice for me to be able to share this. And, me and a lot of my teammates, we were discussing, and this is something that I shared with a lot of the people who turned out, is that it's not just the players on the team who won Billie Jean King Cup, it's the people who backed us from the start. So that's our friends and family, it's Tennis Canada, it's our provincial associations, the list goes on and on and on. So it's nice that we have these moments to share with the people who matter most to us.
Maybe just reflecting on, those years growing up as a junior. And I think you started tennis a little bit later than some. Like I read you initially began with badminton before transitioning to tennis. Have you seen, just even coming back to the Vancouver area, more and more building blocks in place and just the development of tennis at a grassroots level more and more each time you kind of visit back?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we have a lot of momentum right now, especially after, we won Billie Jean King Cup, we have Davis Cup win, we have top players who are staying as top players, serving as role models for our young juniors. And definitely out in BC, people love tennis recreationally, but we're seeing more and more kids picking up rackets. I know that we have a lot of push for a Girl Set Match program with Tennis Canada, National Bank. I'm a part of that. And so I see a lot of little girls who aspire to have tennis in their life, whether that's at a high performance level or just as a recreational level. And that's really nice for me to see sort of firsthand how at the grassroots level we have a lot of excitement about tennis.
For you, when you kind of started out, was it something you got like hooked on, obsessed about right away, or did that take some time, or was it sort of from the first moment you were hitting tennis balls, you're like, this is something I really want to do? Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Match Point Canada. If you'd like to follow along every week, give us a like below, hit the subscribe button as we're trying to make 15,000 subs. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to another episode of Match Point Canada. If you get the chance, check out the first episode of Tennis Nation, recapping Canada's historic Davis Cup win from 2022.
I think tennis from the start was something that I really wanted to do. For me, the way I was introduced to tennis was with my family. So as you sort of talked about before, badminton was my first sport. And when I was around 9 or 10, like I had hit a tennis ball or two, at the public court. But when I was 9 or 10, I did a summer camp for badminton and tennis. And that's when it really took off. My dad was learning how to play tennis at a later age in his late 30s. And so he signed up my brother and I so we could learn as well. And it could be our family thing together. So that was super fun. And I was essentially a multi-sport kid until about 13 or 14. So I wouldn't say it was like I was obsessed. It was something that I really loved, and I loved the competition, and I loved the competition of all the sports I did. But tennis was the one that I really felt like the most challenge and really pushed me because it is more of an individual sport. It's very, I don't know, you don't have a time limit and you have to find strategies. It's not just about being powerful. It's about, the mind as well. So I think that's what really pushed me to go towards tennis. And then when you reach a certain level, you have to figure out, your after school programs, and you make sacrifices. Am I going to play volleyball team this year, or am I going to play tennis after school? And for me, it was, tennis from that. But I made the right choice, I think.
I certainly think you did. And that's cool that you explained sort of that multi-sport connection, especially those first handful of years. I remember Wayne Gretzky, for example, urging parents to say, like, have your kids play absolutely everything as a kid. Are you like pretty pro that over sort of the specialization route?
Oh, absolutely. I am a firm believer in having a multi-sport kid, a multi-sport athlete. I think it's just a really great thing for life to know how your body is coordinated, and putting the mind body connection and understanding how that works. And it's very applicable to tennis. But I think we see that if a child specializes too young, that can be really mentally challenging as well, because it's too ultra specific. So big multi-sport advocate, maybe a little biased because that's the route I went. But if the great one, if Wayne is saying it's the way to go, I think that backs me up a little bit.
100%. Let's talk a bit about your tennis this season. And I feel like things were really clicking for you early in the year. Won a great title in Mexico. How do you feel right now about the way you're trending in terms of confidence and the way you're playing on the court?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, great start to the year. Australia started well, qualifying there, winning a tournament in Mexico. Feel like I still have a lot of momentum from that. Feeling really good. I'm healthy right now, which is something that all athletes want, is to be mid-season healthy. And yeah, just trying to keep that momentum going. I'm very motivated for this season. I'm feeling really excited for Roland Garros, and we have the grass season coming up, and then obviously hardcourt is where I like to perform. So hopefully the summer can hit off pretty well too. But yeah, I think the game's there. Sometimes it just, you got to wait for it to click. So I'm just hoping that the next event or two that'll happen. I felt like my matches in Japan were really good recently. So it's there, and feeling good and feeling confident.
Yeah, we've seen you play some doubles pretty frequently as well this season. Is that something you're hoping to keep up for the rest of the season? And does that help the singles at all as well, getting those reps in doubles?
I think so. I mean, that's why I wanted to play a little bit more doubles this season. The more time I can be on court, the more I feel like it helps my singles game, particularly doubles. The things I'm working on in doubles are things that benefit my singles game. I want to work on my returns. I want to work on moving up to the net more and feeling comfortable at the net. And obviously we can think about that. That's really important in doubles. It'll transition over to singles pretty well. And it's nice that I've had some success in doubles too, because I've always loved doubles. I just wanted to give myself more of a chance to play it. And I'm in that position right now. And, you know, it's nice to be on a team too.
Yeah, definitely. We spoke to, I had a great conversation with Coach Patricia Hy-Boulais earlier in the season on the podcast. And I'm just curious what she has brought maybe to your game and your team, and how helpful has that partnership been, just having her alongside with you for a bit of this season?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I feel like she's been a great addition to the team. She's more on the travel side, and then at home where we're with Roberta Brogan. So they've made a really fantastic team, communicating well together. I think Patricia, being a former player, is a huge asset. She understands everything I've gone through. She's pretty much been there, done that. Great singles player, great doubles player. And, you know, her life story is something that's really inspiring as well. So I think to have her on my team is something that's really incredible. So I thank her for wanting to be a part of this with me. And she's a great tactician. She's a really intelligent player. That's what she brought when she was playing on the court. And so to have her on my side of the court, telling me a little bit more what to do strategy wise, has been really great. So she's a fantastic asset. I can't say any more positive things about her. She's really great.
And just schedule wise, right now, is your next event sort of Roland Garros qualifying? Is that the target, and then you'll shift over to grass?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the plan, is to start with Roland Garros qualifying over in Europe and then shift over to grass.
Perfect. Now you're a couple years younger than me, but I'd certainly call you a veteran player of the tour. At this stage of your career, what do you find maybe becomes easier to manage, and what becomes a little more difficult, would you say?
Great question. I feel like I'm balancing things a little bit better. The life in tennis, I feel like, I mean, you say I'm a veteran, but in ways I feel like I'm a newbie because I had those 5 years off, but those 5 years taught me a lot of things in terms of knowing how to balance things. So that's been really important to me, particularly this year. That's kind of my theme, is balance. Yeah, and I think just understanding the importance of tennis in my life. I think that as I'm getting older, I'm appreciating it more. I still feel like I have some good years left in me. I'm
For sure.
healthy and I'm feeling good. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I'll think more about that question, and when we get closer to the, that time, I'll have some better answers for you. But I think tennis as a whole is a great teacher for things in life.
Well, and I love the mix I think that you guys have on the roster of the Billie Jean King Cup team. Just even last year, you look at yourself, Jeannie Bouchard, who's obviously had a lot of experience, and then mixing in players like complete newcomers like Marina Stakusic, who's sort of learning this on the fly and doing so well. Leylah, who's still young but has had big time success. What was that? Maybe what's that camaraderie like with those girls, and is it helpful to have sort of a group of women who are in kind of different stages of maybe their careers and lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why our team did so well. We really gelled and clicked together. And I think, I mean, I've always spoken about this, but I think we're in a very fortunate position that all the women on the team get along. We all respect each other a lot, and we're cheering for each other constantly. But yeah, it's great that we have that mix of young ones, some older ones who've been around on tour that can sort of be role models to teach the young ones the way. Yeah, I think it's a really great mix. And I'm excited to see how, you know, Leylah continues, Marina continues, Jeannie's back playing again, I saw this week, or you know, so
Yep.
we'll see how everyone goes. But yeah, great teammates. I'm really proud of everyone and their careers and where they're at. And I should mention Gabby as well. I feel bad if I don't mention her.
Sure.
She's just doing amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she and Aaron are a great duo. So respect everyone's games a lot and how we gel together.
Is it tough when you're playing in singles and one of them is a cross on the other side of the net? I know you had a match earlier this season against Stakusic. You had another match against, I
Yeah.
think, Carol Zhao at one point. Is it hard to kind of put those things aside?
I think we're all pretty good about, you know, business first and then personals off court. You know, that's the way it goes. Sometimes you can't help but play a teammate or a friend on occasion. So you can separate it. So, and I think we're all pretty good about that. But it can be challenging, I think, sometimes see scrappy matches because you want to be the one to come out on top.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And we know all you girls have a lot of competitive fire, which we love. We'll finish with some fun rapid fire questions. I did this with Vashik a few weeks ago. He was into it, so let's
Cool.
give it a shot. Would you say you're a morning or a night person?
I'm a night person.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about so probably day or night match, is night the preference there as well?
Well, I would probably say day match, which is really weird. Saying I'm a night person, but I feel like I'm a night owl in terms of I get my like work done. I get a little energy spurt, but night matches I tend to not like as much. I like playing in the day in the heat. Maybe it's because the ball is a little hotter and faster with the sun. I don't know. I feel like I'm a day match person and a night owl for work.
Okay. This one might ruffle a few feathers, but you were born in Toronto, so East Coast or West Coast?
Oh, I gotta say West Coast. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry guys. I love East Coast too. You know what? If we include East Coast, we can say New Brunswick in there too. That's half of me is New Brunswick. 'Cause that's where all the Marinos are, is New Brunswick, and my mom's side is Vancouver, but I'm in Vancouver, I gotta say West Coast.
Okay. Who's your best friend on the tour?
There's so many. I feel like I can't pick one. I'm gonna say Carol Zhao. Yeah, I think she's really one of my good friends, and I appreciate her friendship on tour. We talk to each other quite often, and I admire her a lot.
That's great. Which player was your idol growing up?
Hmm. There were a few. Let me think. So if I were to name a couple, I would say I really liked Jennifer Capriati when I was playing. When I was watching at the start, sorry. I liked Lindsay Davenport. And then on the men's side, I was a big Pete Sampras fan and a Pat Rafter fan.
Nice.
So
Nice.
a little Pistol Pete.
Love it. Okay, that's good. What's maybe the most memorable moment of your career?
There's so many fantastic moments. So it's really hard to pick one. I think the most memorable would be the first match I won when I came back. So that would be in 2018. I had to go restart my career at ITF at 15,000 in the qualifying. And I was extremely nervous because for people who don't know the story, essentially, after 5 years of not playing, I decided to come back. I quit my job. I didn't go to school. I dropped literally my whole life in order to come back to tennis, and I wasn't even sure if it was worth the gamble. So to win that first match was like, whew, what a relief. And then I won 3 tournaments in a row. So I guess I shouldn't have been so stressed, but that initial feeling of winning that match was, I don't think anything's ever going to beat that, because it was just like, I was so proud of myself for that.
That's so cool. Which current player that you have not faced on tour would you like to play the most?
I'm prepared for this. A kid asked me this week at an event, so it would be Serena. I'd love to play Serena once. I played Venus, but I'd love to play Serena once.
If I do a follow-up, if Serena does not make a return to the tour, who would be the current player?
Sorry.
No, that's
I got
okay.
excited. Current player, who have I not played? I guess Iga. I'd be curious to see how I fare against her. I've never played against her. So yeah, that's my answer for current player, and then you get former player.
No, that's good. That's good.
2 answers in one. There you go.
What's your favorite shot to hit on the tennis court?
I love my serve. Yeah, that's my favorite, would be serve. It's the most controllable shot as well, I find.
Nice. Okay. Last one. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
I think I'm a great driver. I would give myself I feel like, is anybody a 10 though? I would give myself a 9.
Okay.
Like, I feel like I'm very proud of my parallel parking. It's something that I worked really hard on, and I'm going to be nervous if I'm doing parallel parking with anyone who's listened to this now, because the pressure's on. But I feel like I'm quite a good driver. I try to maintain my speed limit. I'm not a race car driver, so but 9 out of 10. I think I'm a law-abiding good driver.
Okay, I like that. Great answer, Rebecca. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and I'm glad that you got that experience celebrating this Champions Tour that we've just kicked off in BC, and getting that first experience as it makes its way across the country. Obviously, you one of many players who played such a huge role in that historic title. So thank you for that, and thanks as always for joining the podcast.
No, thanks for having me on, and I hope everyone can experience the Cup in their hometown as well.
And there's my interview with Canadian tennis player Rebecca Marino. It's cool how close she is, I think, to that community around Vancouver. She talked about playing around all the clubs in the area. And it's true. I've heard Milo speak about this as well. Like, you're such a fabric of that tennis community. You're going to remember all those faces that you knew and saw and spoke to, 20, 30, 40 years later. And she still has those close ties, which I love.
And the West Coast has been a hub of tennis in this country. And I think sometimes Canadian tennis fans maybe lose sight of that, given the fact that the 2 big tournaments, the National Bank Open in Montreal and Toronto, take place every year. But Vancouver and the West Coast have hosted some fantastic international ties over the years. Obviously, Vasek and Rebecca hail from that part of the country as well. And players like that and their accomplishments, and the fact that Rebecca would take the time to come out and involve herself in this kind of moment, is just going to have, more people want to pick up that tennis racket, look to them as role models, and aspire to be like them when they grow up. And Canada's known for many different sports, but I think tennis is the one, maybe along with basketball, with what the Raptors accomplished a few years ago, that has seen the most gains since the pandemic. Clearly, there's so many more people playing on recreational courts these days, and club, waiting lists across the country are at an all-time high. Much to the chagrin of people like me that are trying to get in at some of these clubs. But it's a good thing. It's a good place to be in, because it means that the sport is doing so well here at home.
Yeah, 100%. And look, her career, she's had a bit of a bounce back season here. I think 2023 had a few struggles, but she's certainly on track this year. Played well, as she mentioned, at the front end of the Australian Open, qualifying there and getting past one round before losing to Pegula. Had that great ITF win in Mexico. She's playing more doubles, which she talked about how that's helping her singles game. And I think she's trending in a great direction. And right now, for her in the schedule, you do Roland Garros qualifying. Maybe we don't expect massive things for her on clay, but I think she's especially dangerous on those fast surfaces when you talk about grass, and then especially indoor hard court season. She can be really, really strong with that service weapon that she has.
And she knows that too. And just listen to the players that she grew up admiring. I mean, Jennifer Capriati, Lindsay Davenport, those were hard court players. And they were, they just bashed the heck out of that tennis ball. And Pete Sampras, and certainly Rebecca's got a great first serve as well, which is a weapon for her. And even Pat Rafter, someone who played want to dictate the points kind of player. So definitely, as she mentioned, hard court is going to be her main surface, but that doesn't mean, on grass, that serve is a fantastic weapon as well. And, the thing I took from the interview that I really liked hearing about was she has no plans on, retiring or even thinking about the end of her career anytime soon. And she's 33 years old, so many good years still left ahead. And I think having that break in her career has probably helped her stay hungrier at this stage than maybe most people would in their early to mid 30s. And I think just having that time away from the grind of the court and the toll it takes on your body is also going to lend well to her having perhaps a lengthier career than some of her contemporaries.
I have to say, I think I got a couple goosebumps when she was describing her most memorable moment being that first win back after the 5 years. Like, I can imagine just exhaling, like you're putting all this stress on, like, is this the right decision? I'd stepped away from the sport for so long. Can I still possibly do this? And I think we remember our podcast from those years ago, just talking about that incredible run she went on with three consecutive ITF titles on her return, was so special. So it's great that she reflects back on that moment so positively as probably career defining moment for her and where she's at now.
And she's been such a, well said. And she's been such a great part of the Canadian team as well. She's come in clutch at times. She's, one of those great depth players that can rise to the occasion, and she can be there to help in practice. She can be there to step in and be that number two singles player as well. And again, it kind of highlights some of the depth that we have in Canadian tennis. And just to transition for a moment before we look at all the action in Rome, but again, looking at depth in Canadian tennis, we've got a big event coming up here in Toronto. And so just want to share a little bit about that from our friends at 10XTO and Hotel X here in the city. So get ready for the first ever doubles only tennis event on the OTA calendar at 10XTO, presented by Sam McDaddy Real Estate Brokerage. This thrilling 5-day event kicks off Wednesday, May 22nd and runs through Sunday, May 26th at the state-of-the-art 10XTO Athletic Club located at Hotel X. This OTA-sanctioned tournament marks Ontario's first doubles-only prize money tennis event, drawing top-tier talent, including national-level juniors, NCAA athletes, and semi-pros. In addition to tournament play, experience nightly feature matches, offering on-court seating free to the public. Don't miss out. Register now at the OTA website or visit 10xto.com/tournament for more details.
And as we move on to Rome, and we're getting used to these 2-week tournaments. Obviously, that's becoming a theme, and it's a big change that's going to come to the National Bank Open as well next year. If we start on the women's field, I think the big news of the week is Elena Rybakina, who's obviously, I still view her as a contender at Roland Garros, withdrawing due to illness, which I really didn't anticipate coming. But I feel like she's had these moments and spots over the past few years where she does get physically worn out. And it happens here again in Rome, which to me, now with her absence, it's kind of Iga and Arena leading the field.
Well, listen, players like her are going deep in just about every tournament that they play. Yeah. And so the wear on their bodies, in particular, her, Sabalenka, Swiatek, you can understand when perhaps there's a breakdown there. And I would say probably, hopefully, more cautionary at this point when the big event is coming up. The biggest, I should say, event is coming up. If you feel anything, whether it's illness or a little niggle or injury that's cropping up on you, you're going to want to take every precaution. And, on the men's side, I feel like right now we've got a few more players that are sort of taking some time away. And I would imagine it's mostly to make sure that they're at their best when Roland Garros comes around. The 2-week events are nice, though, let's be honest, for players that are dealing with little things. And I think at the National Bank Open, starting in 2025, this will be a benefit as well, is you don't have to grind it out every single day, that you'll have that day off in between those matches, just as you would at a major. And so from that standpoint, I think it's going to be appreciated from the players to have these longer events. And hopefully we see Rebecca back in there, because I want to see those top 3 women going at it and just see them standing as 3 of the 4 last ones there. And hopefully Coco Gauff as well, who, is very much a strong top 5 player, but I think just maybe a little bit dip between her and the other 3 in terms of what we see in this clay court season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And she came through a very tough 3-setter against Paula Badosa. I read a stat about Danielle Collins, which floored me. She's 1-4 this season against that trio of Iga, Arena, and Rybakina. She's 24-1 against the rest of the tour. And
Holy
that
smokes.
is staggering. You think about the level of tennis she's playing. And I hadn't really properly taken notice of that yet, basically the bulk of her losses in any events this year have been to, if we call them a bit of a big 3 in the success they've had. But that gives you a sense of just how phenomenal and strong Collins has been. We saw that consecutive match winning streak, winning back-to-back titles, Miami, Charleston. I just didn't expect her to be able to transition it so smoothly to a different surface. But it just feels like the way how loose and free she's playing, put her on any tennis court in the world, and she's going to play her game and be ready to beat just about anybody.
Well, she's got added motivation knowing that this is it for her in all likelihood. Who knows what could happen down the road in the future? Maybe she'd return to the game as some other players have done. But she's kind of operating under the mindset that this is going to be it. And that can go 2 ways for a player, right? That pressure can get to you. You could be distracted by the fact that more people are kind of coming over and speaking to you and bringing up that impending retirement more and more often. Or in her case, obviously, it's just like you said, playing loose, playing her best tennis. And I had not heard that stat that you just shared, but that is really something else to hear. 24-1 against everybody other than those top 3 players.
Yeah, just incredible. Leylah, Annie Fernandez, tough opening round loss to Anna Bogdan. I didn't see this one coming, and I'm a little surprised because I feel like we've seen some good moments from Leylah this year, and then I look at her win-loss on the year, and it's 8-10, and it's just feels like she's been rather streaky on occasion. I mean, she had her one, I believe, quarterfinal run at one Masters 1000 event. And since then, she just hasn't really put it together on clay. She did get that one win over Potapova in Madrid and push Jabeur. But I wonder if there's a small crisis of confidence maybe at this point with Roland Garros around the corner. But you never know. This could turn quickly.
Yeah, she had such a great tournament that was back in Qatar earlier this year in February, where she made it to the quarterfinals, losing to Rybakina, but beating Qinwen Zheng, Paula Badosa, and Samsonova as well on the way to the quarters. And we thought, oh, hey, Leylah's back. I was going to say the old Leylah, but she's still so young. I don't think we can use that term. And that's what gives us hope moving forward. But yeah, we want to see that consistency. I think we've talked about that for a while. We'd love to see that consistency from all of our Canadian players. But the talent is there, and she's had a great run before at Roland Garros, making it to the quarters, almost semis, if not for injury, I want to say. And let's wait and see what the draw, holds. She's definitely a player that, despite the 8-10 record, as you mentioned, she's still a player that nobody's going to look forward to having to play early on. And I think that just speaks to the confidence that we have in her abilities and capabilities moving forward.
Aaron Ratliff was a recent guest on this podcast. You had that long conversation with her, which was terrific. And we talked about that great partnership and duo with Gabby Dabrowski. And I don't know if Dabrowski's dealing with some kind of injury, because we haven't seen her now in consecutive draws, and Ratliff is kind of mixing and matching with partners until, I guess, Gabby returns.
Yeah, I spoke with Erin the other day because she kind of sent me an apology email saying, hey, sorry, Mike, I just spoke with you and we were talking in the interview about how her and Gabby were going to be back at it in, I think, Madrid. And then that didn't happen. And she wanted to kind of reach out to say, like, hey, I wasn't misleading you. I just didn't really know.
Yeah.
And yeah, Gabby is dealing with some injury issues at the moment. Looks like it's going to be a grass court reset for that partnership to come back together. But in the meantime, it's not like Erin has not found a wonderful sort of temporary replacement playing with Coco Gauff, one of the best, if not the best. Is she one or two now? I have to go back and check, but
Right up
doubles
there.
players
Yeah.
in the world. So, and you know what? That speaks volumes too, I think, into how much respect players have for Erin Routliffe right now. That someone like Coco Gauff is teaming up with her. Erin is ranked in the top 10 of the women's doubles world and has come so far over the last year. And people have taken notice of that. So it's really, when it's her and Coco Gauff, it's two fantastic doubles players that are coming together. And that's a testament to the improvement that the Canadian/Kiwi has really made.
Yeah, Coco has dropped to 21 because she just hadn't played the doubles in quite a while. But this is a player who's obviously reached the pinnacle there, number one in doubles, which is incredible. If we
I think we
talk,
consider her a top 5 doubles player
oh,
for sure, right?
without a
Like,
doubt, if she's playing, and she just hadn't been for a stretch of time. If we talk about the men's field, the word that comes to mind is carnage, and I feel like we've had that at back-to-back events. Let's start with Novak Djokovic because he missed Madrid and he was gearing up for Rome. This is his best clay court event. He's won it 6 times. He plays outstanding tennis here. He's had so many phenomenal matches with Rafa in finals, and certainly you're thinking this is a crucial tune-up event for him ahead of Roland Garros. Has to feel his game. Gets a win over Corentin Moutet in his opening round. He's exiting through the alleyway off the court, stops for an autograph. Always gracious, Novak. A fan leans over and his water bottle slips out of his backpack and hits Novak in the head. And this isn't a plastic water bottle. This is like a steel water bottle.
well, you could tell by the way he went down that it was not, one of those plastic water bottles your kids uses, right? It was
Right.
heavier than that. And I got to say, it's one of the oddest videos I've ever seen. You're kind of surprised maybe that something like this doesn't happen more often, given the fact that players are pretty accessible at these events, and most of them are very obliging, just like Novak is. When I saw the first angle of the video, because there's multiple angles, of course, the first one, it's like, oh my goodness, what happened? Like, did somebody throw that intentionally? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of, Novak fans kind of leapt to that narrative maybe a little bit quickly. It wasn't that, fortunately. And when you saw it, it was just so unfortunate. And the poor guy, after he leaned over and the water bottle fell out of the knapsack, you could just tell that moment where he was like, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
And terrible luck. And, did that then impact Djokovic? I guess on some level it must have, but talk about one of the flukiest tennis type injuries I think we've ever seen.
Incredibly unfortunate incident. He had medical checkups after. He was bleeding on his head. He said he just didn't feel right, and he plays Toronto-born and Chilean Canadian. I love to talk about this guy and Alejandro Tabilo, this electric lefty with a huge forehand, big game. He played great. He played a phenomenal match. He came ready and prepared, handled the nerves super well, and rolls past Novak Djokovic in straight sets. Novak did not look himself. He just did not produce a competitive match. He clearly wasn't moving very well, just wasn't sharp off either forehand or backhand wing. So things were evidently off from his side. But Tabilo still has to produce great tennis to get that victory. But now you do worry about Novak leading into Roland Garros, even if this is something minor. Like he's had very limited reps on the clay.
Who's going to be the favorite heading into Roland Garros? You got Sinner that's, dealing with things. You got Alcaraz dealing with things. Novak, not to mention Nadal, who's at the most vulnerable we've ever seen him for obvious reasons, lack of match play and his physical ailments. It's going to be quite wide open, I think, on the men's side. I'm not a betting person, but I wonder what the odds are going to look like and how do the bookies even come up with the odds given how much uncertainty there is right now on the men's side of things.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you who the favorite would be. It's very, very difficult. As you said, all our top guys are dealing with some kind of injury or susceptible to a freak accident. In this case, for Novak Djokovic, we hope he gets healthy. Obviously, for French Open, he will have some time. Hubert Hurkacz, we talked about that huge win in the past that he had over Roger Federer. I remember you spoke to him actually at the National Bank Open last summer. That was a major moment in his career, taking out Roger at Wimbledon. This wasn't the same, I suppose. He's not playing Rafa at Roland Garros, but again, beating an iconic legend of the game in the final stretch of his career, defeating Nadal 6-1, 6-3. Hubie came to play, and it is evident, obviously, when we watch Rafa, he's at the very last stretch of the career here.
And Hurkacz is such a nice guy. He would take absolutely no pleasure in beating these two legends in this fashion, but he's got a job to do, and you certainly can't fault him for that. But yeah, just in the same way that I felt when Federer lost that last set at Wimbledon in the quarter 6-love to Hurkacz, felt similar to watching Rafa go down by a pretty routine scoreline and just realizing, yeah, they're at the end of the line here, and it's kind of sad to see on some level for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult. I thought Nadal played pretty well the previous tournament in Madrid, but it's certainly, if you're making a list of top 5 guys to win Roland Garros, you'd like to say with his history, maybe he could be in the mix, but I don't think we've seen enough in this clay court lead up to suggest he's a contender to win it.
No, I mean, he's even talked about kind of second guessing whether he should play Roland Garros, but kind of leaning towards doing it as he realizes it'll be his last chance to do so. But it's got to be tough from his perspective, realizing, I mean, when has he ever entered Roland Garros not believing in himself fully and completely? But I don't even think he does at this point, unfortunately.
Felix Auger-Aliassime losing a tough one to Alex de Minaur in 3 sets. No shame in losing to the world number 11, who's having a phenomenal season. I thought Auger-Aliassime played well, but double faults killed him in this match. He had 13 of them, which is unfortunate. As we wrap up, Dominic Thiem announcing he will retire at the end of the 2024 season. Thoughts on his career?
Well, just kind of wonder what could have been if not for the wrist issues that he experienced, because when he won that US Open at the age of 27 during the pandemic in 2020, we kind of thought, oh, okay, maybe now he's ready. He had made the finals of the Aussie Open, 2 Roland Garros finals, and then it finally clicked in New York. And you kind of thought, okay, with the big 3 getting older, maybe Thiem is kind of going to assert himself now as someone to perhaps rise up and take a spot at the top of the game. And he never made it past the 4th round of a major after that, unfortunately. So, yeah, just kind of difficult to see someone going out this way who can't continue to compete at the level he once could, not through lack of talent or dedication to the sport, but the injury, unfortunately. And, you know, I just think back to that win against Zverev, which was one of the weirdest finals I've ever seen in terms of the back and forth and like who wants it or doesn't want it. It was so strange to see him lift that trophy in front of an empty arena. And so you kind of feel for him that his one big moment, huge moment, was without a crowd there to sort of, you know, recognize it properly.
Yeah, for me, he is that one player through, I think, a 3-year stretch who could really properly challenge and beat the big 3. And he beat all of them. I had a huge Miami Open win. I remember was it Indian Wells, and beat Federer in a final. Victories over Nadal on clay, which are so incredibly hard to come by, multiple ones. Obviously lost a couple French Open finals. And then I think it'll go down in history as probably the strangest US Open final of all time. Empty crowd, and he has his grand slam. We'll have to wrap at that point. Camilla Giorgi as well, retiring from the sport unannounced, but she was our National Bank Open champion in Montreal just a couple years ago. Thanks to Rebecca Marino for joining us on this week's podcast. We'll be back next week to wrap up Rome. Get ready for Roland Garros, guys. You've been listening to Matchpoint Canada. We'll talk to you next time.